hearing of the Senate Select Committee on Workforce Development, School Environment, and Student Wellness, and the Assembly Select Committee on Career Technical Education and Workforce Development will come to order. Assemblyman Furutani and I have worked closely on this issue for a number of years, are passionately interested in the possibilities of using career technical education, school to career, linked learning, multiple pathways, you name it, to give our young people a relevant, rigorous education that will get them, as we say, hooked on learning, interested in academic learning and the applications of learning, keep them in school, prepare them for jobs and careers right out of high school, prepare them for community college, for four-year college, and for a situation where the sky is the limit for them. And having worked with these programs for many, many years personally, since I was in local government and worked with the Bayer Chemical Corporation to start a biotech academy at our public high school, to working with school to career legislation, and now for almost 10 years now in the state legislature, watching a system form and become increasingly sophisticated and effective. So we're here today to kind of look at where we are and some of the issues around what works really well, accountability, and some of the supports that are available to educators and the business community that are trying to put these things together for us. So I'm delighted that we are able to have this hearing today. Assemblyman Furutani, do you want to add anything?
Thank you very much, Senator. Good morning, everybody. Lonnie, this hearing is so timely. I can see in the audience several of us were together yesterday in this very same hearing room around education issues, and the lengthy discussions that took place around community college. I had several bills around career tech ed. Some of you remember last week we had major hearing in labor around workforce development boards, around WIB, and any number of different things. This is so timely to look at this really fundamental education issue. I don't have it with me, but I usually bring a visual aid that I use. It's called Mapping Out Funding for Job Training and Workforce Development. It's a huge fold-out of 4 pages. It goes like this. And if you look at it, all the different groups that are doing this area of career tech ed, workforce development, the old job training, vocational ed, whatever terms you want to use, new ones like linked learning, multiple pathways. There's a whole bunch of people that are dabbling in it, a whole bunch of people that have been working in it for years and years and years, but we tend to be all over the place. And I think this is a good start to try to bring this into a more strategic view for the 21st century. We talk about jobs, we talk about the green industry, we talk about new things. All of these things that we're talking about, if we don't have an educated, prepared, ready workforce, all of this is not going to happen. So on the bills I carried yesterday, I not only had support from the Superintendent of Public Instruction, but also the Lieutenant Governor. People are interested in this, and I think, Lonnie, the timing on this is excellent, and thank you very much for putting this together, and I've enjoyed working with you and will continue to do so.
Yeah, we've done a lot of bills and,
That's right.
and things that are, and another senator who's joined us, Senator Lieu, who's also done a lot of education work and work in career technical education back before it was as popular as it is now. Do you want to make any remarks?
Thank you very much. I'm just here to learn, and I agree. I think that we do need a strategic plan. The state needs a strategic plan to better educate our workforce, and this is an opportunity, and I just look forward to the testimony today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, to kind of kick off the hearing, we're really delighted to welcome Marty Morgenstern, the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development Agency. Marty, do you want to come up? As everybody knows, he's been here forever, since 1975 when he was appointed by Governor Jerry Brown in the first term in the Governor's Office of Employee Relations, through being director of the Department of Personnel Administration several times, working with the Center for Labor Research and Education at UC Berkeley, et cetera, et cetera. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me and Assemblyman Virtani and Senator Lieu for inviting me to be here. Let me be frank. When I was asked to unretire one more time because I was needed, I don't think it was because of my expertise in education and workforce development. My experience is much greater, and that's why, incidentally, Brian McMahon, who's the executive director of the Employment Training Panel, and Doug Hoffner, the undersecretary of the agency, are here with me because I fear you might ask questions later. When I was asked to retire one more time, as I say, I don't think it was my experience in education and workforce development. My experience is much greater in more confrontational aspects of labor management relationship, collective bargaining, pension, health benefits, and the like. But that's not to say I don't have some experience, some ideas, concerns, visions about school to work and about the operations of the agency should address in those areas. First of all, I know that we need some new vigor and some new emphasis on workforce investment and training in this administration, and we intend to bring it. As the chairman said, some 20 years ago, I was chair of the Center for Labor Research and Education at UC Berkeley. And there I came upon some research led by Ira Magaziner, mostly, as I recall, that indicated that in the United States we did virtually nothing to prepare the non-college bound youth for the world of work. And maybe that's changed some since, but not enough. While at UC, I tried and mostly failed to get some programs going that attended to this serious shortcoming in our educational system. Certainly, I feel that every student whose intellect and interests lead to college should be encouraged and where appropriate, assisted. I don't want to downplay the need for a college education. If the City University of New York did not offer free tuition, and if the GI Bill hadn't been around, I'd never have been able to go through college, and I'm glad that government was there to help. But the fact is that not everyone is able to get to college or wants to go to college. For any number of reasons, not everyone will go to college. The State Department of Education says there are over 6 million students enrolled in K through 12 in 2009. They think the graduation rate is about 78%. That's hard to measure. A lot of other places find it a lot lower than that. Well, that means that, there's going to be 1 million or more students that are never going to go to college. And never going to get through college never going to make it through high school, 1 million or so youth. And many more will never get to college or any post-secondary education as we're now structured. If we break it down by race, minorities tend to do much less well than others. I believe that those aging out of foster care or with special needs have even more difficulties. Pro Tem Steinberg's first question in preparation for my confirmation asked what I hope to accomplish as Labor Secretary. I said then that we needed to grow the economy, and one aspect of that would be to invest in training that leads to a job. I said that training that helps working people attain basic skills in math and reading will be invaluable in making them employable. And I went on to say that our agency's training programs, WIA, ETP, apprenticeship, should be working toward getting people into jobs, more jobs, and better jobs. 6 months into my job, I'm more convinced than ever that that is the right first goal. My vision, my primary effort in workforce development is to provide training and assistance to those that need it the most. I believe those that need it the most are those who didn't finish high school or aren't planning to go directly to college from high school. I mentioned earlier that the research I accounted while at UCB Labor Center indicated that much of, I refer to that research, it indicated that in much of Europe, high school students served in apprenticeship-like programs, but these programs were not limited to construction. Our construction apprenticeship is invaluable, and the governor is an avid supporter. But his vision is to expand beyond construction, and that is what's being done in Western Europe and perhaps elsewhere. High school students are learning to work in banks and insurance companies and retail establishments and many other places. I'd like to find ways to do more of that here. And we are doing so. I spoke at the JVS Strictly Business Annual Awards Luncheon in LA last month. JVS LA has just such a program with local banks. I spoke with the director. She told me it was based on working closely with employers and step by step every inch of the way. We have to do more of that. JVS in San Francisco has such a programs, and I'd like to read very briefly from an email I got from them yesterday. The Community Opportunity Internship Program, that's JVS and UCSF, are trying to increase diversity in the UCSF workforce, especially among low-income communities in San Francisco. I'll just read a paragraph or two, if you will. Last Friday, 20 students completed the first phase of the program, selected from over 200 applicants. These students spent 8 weeks full-time classroom at JVS, building their computer skills, learning medical terminology, customer service, how the insurance reimbursement system works, and improving their basic English and math skills. We emphasize basic workplace soft skills, and I'll skip by some of that. The students started their 3-month internship at UCSF this week, working through the medical center, the university, in radiology, neurology, human resources, construction planning, and other departments. They will work at their internships 4 days a week and come back to JVS on Fridays to review and reinforce skills. The last time they ran this program, 12 out of 16 people made it through and ended up with good jobs. And here is, I think, the key. The program serves as an example of a model workforce development program, employer-driven, with customized training designed to meet specified employer needs, preparing low-income people with limited work experience and skills for well-paying jobs in a growing system with clear pathways. This program integrates classroom and workplace learning to build skills including basic literacy, computer, and soft skills with support throughout the program for the students. I'd like to do more of that. This program selected 20 out of 200 applicants, so obviously not everybody's going to qualify, but as these programs become more popular, more people are going to want to get into them, more people are going to work to qualify for them, and I think that's a reasonable expectation. I think it was Brian who told me that at least only 2% of the training we're doing now is aimed at that workforce.
With employment training people.
And I don't know if it's much different with we are aiming at high school dropouts. I want to change that. Between 2009 and 2011, California will need to place more than 1 million people in jobs. About a quarter of that will be new jobs, and the rest will be replacement. We need trained workers. There will be jobs for trained workers. We need to get the training to those who need it most. Well, I think I should mention briefly 2 matters related to how we deliver training and go about workforce development. What is our strategic plan? Do we need one? How should state government be best structured to accomplish our goals? Assemblyman Furutani has a bill, AB 1310, that would mandate a state plan to connect education and workforce development. AB 1310 would direct the Secretary to work with the Community College Chancellor, the Board of Education, CPEC, reps from K-12, business labor to develop a comprehensive plan. One of our constituent organizations strongly supports the concept and thinks it's essential. Another thinks it's duplicative work that's already been done.
Name names.
I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to try and determine who's right. I suspect we'll learn that the direction. I expect I will lean in the direction of taking a fresh look at the plans that now exist and the need for a better strategic model. I'm told that we should be looking at Washington State workforce model, and I intend to do that. I'll do everything else I can to further job training and education, training for new skills that will be needed in the green economy, high skills that California will need to grow the economy and fill jobs. I'll work with other agencies, employers, unions, the legislature to accomplish this. I hope we'll learn a lot from this hearing today and the other stuff the committee does. When it comes to structure or restructuring, we haven't gotten too far in terms of the agent, to be honest. I came into the job questioning the size of our bureaucracy and the need for so many divisions, departments, boards, commissions, and agencies. We've so far asked for 2 boards to be eliminated, and we've slimmed the agency down from 25 people to 10 or 11, and tomorrow we move out of a very expensive building into a state-owned building and saving $500,000 a year on rent. So, the larger reorganization would go in, and the other stuff in the governor's office because of the budget and because of other legitimate concerns. We haven't got to yet, but they're on the agenda, and now that we've got the budget, I think we'll be moving, so our structure will be better able to allow us better able to deal with these problems. I hope that helps.
Thank you. So do I. I didn't know if, did you gentlemen have something you wanted to say, or are you here?
You have some comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I looked as though you did. That's why I asked.
He did.
And we're interested.
I asked him to be here.
The employment training panel is one of the boxes in that large chart that Assemblymember Furtani mentioned earlier. We're created by statute. We've been around for many years. Our primary mission is to really focus on incumbent worker training in contracts that are entered into directly with employers. We also have another structure of contracting that we use, and that's what we call a multiple employer contract. And that's when ETP starts to develop partnership relationships with members of the education and workforce community. We contract directly with community colleges, workforce investment boards, training agencies, community-based organizations. It's through those types of contracts where a curriculum is developed that basically is created through input of local employers. They define the types of skill needs they need to have, and these multiple employer contracts then offer a vehicle for mostly small businesses that don't have the time or the strategic need to go through a more lengthy direct contract with the employment training panel. So they come to ETP resources through that type of a structure. And then there's a sub-element of the multiple employer contracts where we actually touch new hire populations. And when I say new hire, I mean workers that have been dislocated, returning veterans, youth that have left high school either prematurely or after graduation. And one of ETP's strengths is that it's 100% performance-based. ETP doesn't reimburse the training provider unless a job placement is actually made. So while we have great accountability with our funds, it also creates an impediment for really targeting those disadvantaged populations, because the training agency bears the risk of the training costs, and should that individual not ultimately be employed, then they're not reimbursed for those costs.
And let me just add that's one of my frustrations, because that makes it very difficult to get employers to take the responsibility to go directly with them, because they don't want to lay out the money in advance. And I think we have to try and work something out to overcome that problem.
And even beyond that impediment, there are models where we have successfully worked with community-based organizations. Secretary Morgenstern mentioned the JVS Los Angeles project called BankWorks, And as he indicated, the success factor there is that employers engaged very closely with the training entity, influenced the design of the curriculum to a very great extent, and made that important commitment that when the trainees exit the program, they have a job waiting for them. So we have a very high level of success in that category. We work with joint apprenticeship training committees on a very regular basis for pre-apprenticeship training, and that helps the apprentice programs go through some evaluation, deliver remedial types of training, and helps them screen and mutually identify trainees that have a high level of or high degree of success in the apprenticeship program. So we do have models where we've successfully worked with those types of populations, and certainly are committed to move forward and try and develop more of those.
Could you give us an example of a program like that deals with disadvantaged youth?
We had a project with parents of Watts over the last few years. We've had more than one agreement with them, and they target the young people in the Watts community. The training agency has developed relationships with some of the cable providers in the local area, so that these young people are identified by parents of Watts. They also connect to the one-stop centers for referrals, and these young people then go through ETP-funded training and are placed with these cable companies, and they enter that training with significant barriers to entry and retention in the workplace, and it's been a fairly successful model.
Are these primarily high school dropouts, or young people with a high school degree but
I would
nothing
say
else?
That it's a mix of both. There is a reasonably high percentage of dropouts in those programs.
Are they placed in the county facilities, county camps and things like that? It's a lot of kids that really need to be rescued.
Not under the ETP training model. We're a little restrictive relative to needing to have that private sector placement at the end of the training program.
Yeah, for me, the interesting thing is how we take these programs that work, like the one that you just described, and put them in a system where the classroom teacher is involved in some way. It's connected back to the education system. I've always been fascinated by the silos that we build, and that education as being exempt from almost all the rest of life is, and it's very rare that you get the kind of collaboration that we really need in business education partnerships. They tend to be driven by a training model or an education model. So it would be schools have a hard time finding employers, and they don't have anybody typically in a school whose job it is to seek out those connections. You obviously have some of those connections. The question would be then if, how to merge those perhaps, or to figure out how to get contracts like this in other parts of the state, and how you merge it with academic learning too. That.
Yeah, let me say this, Senator. I think the most successful models have used the community-based organizations to do that, with wraparound services to try and do that. I think Seneca, in your area, JVS, and those. It's a little frustrating that we have to rely on them, and that the businesses don't step forward more. But I think that's been the most success in aligning the teacher and the other social services with the training and education programs.
I think the program issue. I know Sweet Alice. I just saw Sweet Alice Harris just recently went to Parents of Watts. She had a back room with about 20 young men. And she was telling me, Warren, these young men are trained, soft skills, certain different things that they could do. But the question was the job. They need a job. They need a job. And that connection. But I think the biggest challenge isn't program. There'll always be countless programs we can point to that are successful and work. I think the big issue is how does a program become a part of a system? We took, Secretary, a large group, was it 2 years ago, Eric, that we went to the state of Washington? We went to the state of Washington to meet with them about their workforce training program and how they did it as a state structure. And it was pointed out to us by our good friends from the WIB and folks to let's go talk to them. They have a system. And I think that's fundamentally the challenge, that we're always going to have good programs. I mean, a lot of people have worked in summer programs. You employ a young high school student for the summer. They get money. They buy some new clothes and what they need to start school. But it's just a job. The job has got to be a part of a career and a part of a system. And I think that's the threshold we stand at. How do we create the good works that people are doing in a lot of different places into a system? So one of the big things we know in California that's an issue is ESL. We have a lot of immigrants, so they have to learn English. Who's going to teach English? Well, adult schools have been doing a very good job of it. So if that's the place they can get ESL, then how do we direct them there? I went to IBEW electricians apprenticeship program. A new cohort was opening. Hundreds of people lined up to apply. I think the ratio was, they said 200 people applied, 20 passed the test. The biggest problem was algebra. Is IBEW going to teach algebra now, or is IBEW going to be able to refer those students that don't get into the program to East LA College because they're in the City of Commerce where they can get algebra? But if the student didn't pass algebra, they may not be ready for algebra, maybe a couple steps below. But it's got to be a part of a system. So to connect that together, the wraparound services, the casework, I think is really critical. But then the bottom line, and we've had this big issue in the Labor Committee around the bill from Senator DeSaulnier about training. And this is in reference to the WIB and the WEO funding that's come in. How much of it is exactly going for training? The people actually doing the work where the rubber meets the road, they're saying we're getting a lot of training dollars from a lot of different sources, being entrepreneurs. And some of this other money, though, we need not for training because we need the wraparound services, assessment, casework. But I think the bill is really a good bill, even though there's a lot to be worked out, because it's holding people accountable. I mean, I've been around a long time, like a lot of us. And we remember CETA program. I mean, there's so many initials, right, that have gone on. Those organizations came in, left. A new form came in, left. And it seemed, bottom line, at the end of the day, the only people that really had a career was the people that worked in the programs. So that's, I think, the challenge of the system. And it doesn't fit K-12. The closest in an educational form that it fits is community college. But it's in CSU, and then we have these other programs, and again, the fold-out. I just think for the future, there's going to be a new system that is going to be a workforce career tech ed that's going to involve all of these great programs, maximize cooperation, minimize duplication, collaboration. That's going to really cut down, I think, on administrative costs because we won't need to have all this administration for every group. It'll be centralized in the system. But then the fundamental nature of the system for job training, workforce development, is it's going to be based upon regions because each region will have a different approach relative to what industries are there, etc. So again, it keeps coming back to me, Secretary, to the very same thing, and that's my bill, 1310. It's a system, a new system that puts all these people in alignment, really does all of these things that can make what we do have so much more impact.
I think our concern with that will be that we do need a systematic approach. We want to doing it, as you say, creating less bureaucracy and less cost rather than more.
Exactly.
We don't create another agency over existing stuff. We want to streamline the operation.
Madam Chair, I just
Yeah.
pitch in here. The California Budget Project, I mean, this was part of our reading to prepare for the panel today, and I was just struck with all the different agencies that are involved with this topic. And do you all ever sit down together and try to work it out and, break down those silos and try to cooperate with one another and not trip over each other with various programs that we're all concerned about the same population. That population hasn't changed. I mean, so we have all kinds of people. It ranges from CDR to Human Services to the department, the education department, to labor and workforce development out of industrial relations, et cetera, and the community colleges. Everybody has got a piece of this, and it's very incoherent and very confusing to people like us who sit here trying to figure out who's doing what. And I think what happens too is that we all chase the dollar as opposed to creating a program or creating a system that's best, and then trying to fill in the holes as who's going to pay for it.
It's confusing to me too.
Okay,
And
good.
That's why I testified at my confirmation that I wanted to see if we couldn't streamline this. If maybe we didn't have a division, a department, an agency too many or two, and see if we could get everybody working together with a little fewer silos and everyone kind of working together with fewer agencies and more direction and more streamlined direction.
More focused on outcome.
Yeah.
As a small example, from the employment training panel standpoint, we have a fairly direct statutory mandate to work very closely with the workforce system, local workforce investment boards, one-stop centers. So under that multiple employer contract structure that I mentioned, we frequently enter into contracts with one-stop centers or a workforce investment board, and our funds allow them to leverage resources and touch more of the existing employers within their community on skill upgrade of incumbent workers. We work very closely with a number of community colleges around the state, principally through their contract education structure, to tailor programs that meet the needs of local employers.
One of the things I wondered is why we had an employment training panel and a workforce investment board. Why? Well, it's not easy to. The employment training panel money is state money. The workforce investment board is federal money. There are federal rules. I'd like to get them working. Not that they don't work together. They do. Workforce investment board gave the employment training panel some needed money this year. I know, but maybe we could get less structure and more working together as we move along.
Do you think we could do something to conform more state systems to the federal systems in as far as they're good systems? Another thing that's always gotten me is when I've worked for the federal government, which I have in 2 different times, it would seem to me that we would have a rather simple set of rules and grant applications, and we would send them to the state, and they would invariably multiply by about 5 by the time they went down to the locals. I know we had one application, was a 10-page application for the state. It went out as a 60-page application to school districts. And that there ought to be a way to really, if we're passing through federal money in different ways, or if we're aligning state money to federal programs, to do it in a much simpler and more direct way. And I agree. I was fascinated by the charts in this from the California Budget Project. There's about 4 pages of different programs in different state agencies and federal agencies that all relate to this particular issue. I wondered if you have any formal way right now of engaging with the economic development regions that the state has designated. There are 9 economic development regions. Welcome, Senator Steinberg.
Thank you.
And
Wandering the halls. He's wandering the halls.
one of the bills that I'm carrying has been to try to align the workforce, the career technical education programs with the economic priorities as defined by those regional programs, because they do differ. in different parts of the state. And we were able to set up, for example, a pilot program of 4 international trade and transportation academies related to the port cities in California, because it's a big source of jobs. But is there any formal alignment now between the 9 workforce or the 9 economic development regions and the workforce development program?
I don't believe so.
I don't want to overspeak from the EDP standpoint, but we work very closely with the local economic development corporations, the city and county offices of economic development, so that we support most of their business outreach programs to reach employers within their communities. We're typically a resource that's identified as part of a business attraction project. And I know that the State Board over the years has looked at ways, the State Workforce Investment Board has looked at ways to integrate the economic development functions at the local level with the workforce activity as well.
But that's another frustration. They got 49 different districts, not 9 different districts, and so how do you what's really an economic district for practical purposes is another thing we got to figure out.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And it would actually be kind of exciting to try to do that, wouldn't it, in the next few years?
We'll try.
I just want to see, Senator Steinberg has done so much very pioneering work in this area. If you had comments or questions.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair. And I'm sorry that I'm late and that I may have missed a lot of what I'm interested in here. But I think that there is a fabulous opportunity here in California, especially at the state government level, to have a lot of crossover and different kinds of collaboration between the various agencies of state government when it comes to a common goal. And that common goal is making sure that every young person graduates high school, and that they graduate high school with the background and or beginning training to be able to either pursue higher education and or a career pathway. And the two don't have to be mutually exclusive. And I wonder, for example, Secretary Morgenstern, whether or not you've had the opportunity in these early months, and I'm sure the answer is no, but I'm trying to plant a seed here, to sit down with the people at the University of California who are responsible for developing or approving the so-called A to G coursework for admittance to the University of California. And you may... Not yet.
Not yet.
Good. That's okay.
Not quite yet.
That's okay. No, that's all right. I completely understand. The reason why the question is relevant is because A to G is the defining standard for rigor when it comes to high school curriculum. And one of the questions that we are raising here in the legislature, and I'm doing so through a couple of bills that are currently in the Assembly, is whether or not we have the ability, and I believe we do, to maintain rigor across the board, but to develop, as I like to say, 15 different ways of teaching core academic courses in ways that are relevant to the growth sectors in the economy. In other words, why is it that algebra, to take an example, is taught out of a standardized textbook, as opposed to our using our innovation, our creativity, to develop ways to teach algebra that are still rigorous, still meet that standard, but are actually applied to the construction industry or to the biotech industry or to, obviously, the engineering industry. Pick your growth sectors. And the UC now has established this Curriculum Integration Institute at our push to be sort of the central place where we can not just approve courses, they can just approve courses, but actually work to develop them. And I think that this would be a great place for your agency to get right in the middle of, together with the business community, to help create a new thinking around curriculum. The curriculum shouldn't be the way we have done it in the past, one size fits all, but ought to be applied to create a real relationship between academic learning and what we expect young people to do as they graduate, move on, and enter the workforce.
Where at UC?
What's that?
UC Berkeley, UC Davis?
The University of California system. I'd start with Mark Udoff, who has been incredibly enthusiastic, even with all the terrible budget cuts that we have made, in embracing this concept. He gets it, and that's where I would start.
We're actually going to hear later in this hearing from Don Davies-Rougeau, who's the Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions and is working on this Integrated Curriculum Institute, because it's been a big bottleneck. The ability to get UC to actually certify courses as being A to G.
I want to thank Madam Chair and Mr. Chairman for taking this on. I know this is just, another one of those informational hearings. This, in my opinion, is the most important subject this legislature can tackle. Nothing more important, because it connects the fundamentals. It connects education and the economy. And if we can sort of get away from the traditional fights, right? Education reform is sort of scoped out as a pretty narrow bandwidth in terms of what people are fighting about. They're important issues, but this is the issue that Senator Hancock, Assemblymember Furtani, and Senator Lieu are talking about. This is the issue, and we could build coalitions like we've never seen before, have more kids graduate high school, end the plight of the dropout, begin preparing young people for the work world without giving up an inch of rigor when it comes to high standards and what we expect of young people. Sorry, I could go on and on for 4 hours if you want me to, but probably not a good idea.
I think, Senator, though, you're so right on target on this. The issue of making these connections, and I would add to it, UC has been, in my opinion, a bit of a bottleneck. But we have CSU and community college that we really need to add to this mix. It's not just a group up here telling everybody else this is how you do it. I think we need to look at all of those in that process. But I really agree with, I got the scars to prove it from yesterday. The fighting ban is about this wide. It's old fights about it's going to be a tracking system or everybody's going to go here or, people are fighting some really old fights and they ought to get over it. And let's move on to what the new challenge is, which is, I think, exactly what you're saying, Senator. It's looking at how we link these things. And if you want someone to learn algebra, and it becomes very relevant to them if it relates to their job or their career or what they're interested in.
Or what they have to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just-in-time learning.
Yeah.
Right?
So, as I said, when I was at UC trying to do that school-to-work program for the non-college bound, tracking was the thing that got thrown at us as the interference, as the reason we couldn't do it.
Make just one more comment, just because and then I'll listen. But, I know you're also tackling, Senator Hancock, Assemblymember Furtani, the issue of money and these workforce development funds, and are they being spent as effectively as we could? And the only comment that I would make on this, I think we need to do a thorough sort of evaluation, and your analysis, of course, would be very important. But I think the main thing that troubles me about the way we do workforce development in California and maybe throughout the country is that it is usually remediation for failure as opposed to setting up success before there's ever failure. And I just wonder, I know there are a lot of reasons why something can't be done, but why is it that we don't move some of those dollars upstream to the high schools and actually use it as an additional foundation for the career pathways? Because the one thing about high school career pathways, again, rigor and relevance together, is that if a student succeeds from the 9th grade on, we don't have to remediate failure. We can just help continue success. And I hate to see all the money spent on remediation. So the other meeting is with Mr. Torlakson and the governors, and Sue Burr, the executive director of the State Board of Education, in that world, because you could play a key role in helping to bring real resources and expertise into the high schools as well.
Just
small things, and we want it all done by next Friday.
Well, now that we have
It's
a
a holiday
budget,
next Monday. Can't we have till another day or two?
But like the senator is saying in terms of, and we've been talking about this last half an hour about where the money, and on the PowerPoint it's a page at a time or a screen at a time. But when you look at it this way, then it gives you an idea of all these different sources of where that money is. And
Right.
just as you said, Secretary, can we collapse some of this and streamline it so we can maximize it much, much better than this? Every one of these programs has an administration.
That's right.
Right.
Every one of these programs, I bet there's so many duplicative areas. And then you mentioned UC and the research and how to look at these things. This is what we got to get into a system.
Well, since my confirmation hearing, that's what I've been talking about.
Yeah, we raised this at Secretary Morganger's confirmation hearing at great length.
he mentioned it, as a matter of fact. Well, yesterday the budget, tomorrow the world, right? So now we get into some of the really
There you go. I like
exciting
that.
work.
I like that.
We've been joined by Senator Bill Emerson. I don't know if you had any comments or questions for the first panel, Bill?
This one maybe is a bipartisan effort.
Good. See? Here we
Till
go.
we get there.
Yeah, we will.
No, this issue has been bipartisan, Doctor. It absolutely has.
That was just a joke.
No, but it's the truth.
Well, if there aren't any other questions or comments, thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to working with you.
We look
As we
forward to
move
working
forward.
with you and the senator and everybody on all this stuff. We really do. We'll put forth a big effort, hopefully
Great.
with some results.
Great. Thank you so much. Next, we will hear from the California Department of Education. And they're represented today by Deborah Sigmund, who's the Deputy Superintendent of Curriculum, Learning, and Accountability. And we've asked her to talk a little bit about career education and some of the accountability measures that we're looking at for our K-12 schools. Having started as a school psychologist, Deb has worked with the department for years on the issues of accessibility and accountability. So thanks so much for being here. And Pat Ainsworth, who also heads up the what we used to call
Many things.
many things. Yeah, I'm trying. But now we call career technical education.
Right. Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, Senator Liu, Senator Steinberg, and Senator Emerson, thank you so much for inviting us. Really appreciate the opportunity to share with you State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Torlakson's vision and hope for the K-12 system, really pre-K, I would say, pre-K-12 system, the education system, and how it can prepare our students to be 21st century citizens and learners. It's an important, you've all stated kind of where Superintendent Torlakson is and that he cares deeply about these areas as you do as well. We must strengthen and really revitalize the backbone of our system and of our schools around the central mission and the essential mission and the ultimate mission of preparing our kids for the future, preparing our students to be 21st century citizens, preparing our students for the world of work, whether that be directly after high school, after community college, after adult education, after a technical school, or after the university. It's imperative that we remember that that is ultimately our mission, and that doesn't begin at 9th grade, nor at 12th grade. That really begins early on in a very integrated approach. I've listened, and the words that keep coming forward are connectedness and cohesiveness and lack of silos and collaboration. And I will tell you that Superintendent Torlakson has charged us, all of us in the department, to think about how we do business as an agency and to break down those silos and work across divisions and branches to make sure that we provide seamless service to the people that we serve. And I think that that can be a model as we move forward in terms of this important work of school to work. And access to high-quality career technical education programs is certainly a part of this system, a very, very integral part of this system, and important. That we must be willing to invest in, and whether that be in career education courses, career exposure, training all of our students in those soft skills, and the academic integration of programs at the state level as well as at the local level. However, career technical education is only a part of that system. In order for us to fulfill our mission, that mission of preparing our students, we must instill relevancy into our core curriculum. We must increase student engagement across the board so that we can deal with the students, the absolutely unacceptable number of students that drop out of our system. And we must honor the professionalism and creativity of our teaching force. Allow them to be teachers. Allow them to meet the needs of students where they are. And recognize that a one-size-fits-all approach will not guarantee success for all of our students. Our students come to us with different needs and skills, and we need to be able to not only address those needs, but really promote their gifts that they bring to us. And we need to do this in all aspects of our K-12 system. We need to do that in our core academic areas. We need to do that in our assessment system. And we need to do that in our accountability system, which, as all of you know, really pushes the K-12 system to behave in certain ways. The systems must work together toward an integrated goal to prepare our students to be 21st century thinkers, learners, and finally productive and participatory citizens in our economy and in our communities. So how do we get there? What's the K-12 part of that work, if you will? Well, we've begun the process, I would say. We've started with the foundational pieces. The adoption of the Common Core state standards was a significant piece of that work, moving toward a more integrated approach to standards and to curriculum. The Common Core includes that technology piece and literacy across the content areas. The focus of those standards, remember, they were built with college and career-ready standards as kind of their ultimate goal and mapped backwards. That was a very key piece of the standards. Obviously, we need to do more in terms of standards that only covered English, language arts, and math. We have our science standards, and we have our social studies and our visual and performing arts, and our career technical education standards, which really need to be connected to those Common Core standards in a significant way. We need to address our assessment systems, and we've begun to do that. the governor and the state board president, Michael Kirst, as well as Superintendent Torlakson, recently signed on to be a governor state with the National Consortium of Smarter Balanced. We believe that this will get us in a much more, a better place to make sure that our students are college and career ready. The use of technology within those assessments, the ability of those assessments to be flexible to honor the needs and the achievements of all of our students across the board, the use of performance-based items so we can really get to connecting assessments with real-world application. Those are all good things, and we're moving in the right direction. And finally, I would say our third piece where we've made some significant inroads is through, or we're beginning to make some significant inroads, is in terms of our California accountability system. And I'm sure Senator Steinberg will want to say some things about this, but we are, under his leadership, Senate Bill 547 speaks to the issue of revamping our accountability system. I think we all agree that our schools are more than a test score. And yet, for the last dozen years, we really have focused how we deem a school to be effective or to be of quality is through that assessment piece. And I'm a big believer in assessments, but I also recognize, and certainly the superintendent recognizes, that that is not the be-all, end-all. And when you have it, schools will behave in a certain way. And we want schools to respond to the needs of students that are on the verge of dropping out. We want the system to be able to respond to those students who may not want to go to college, who may not need to go to college, who may want to go into the world of work directly. And so we really want to expand our accountability system to really access those pieces of the system. And you can't do that if you continue to rely solely on assessment results. And so the accountability system that the superintendent envisions is one that includes those college indicators, those college readiness indicators, and those career readiness indicators that are so important for all of our students to have as they leave us, as they leave high school. There are places to expand in terms of making sure that our students are a 21st century workforce. Technology in the classroom. Superintendent Torlakson believes so strongly in connecting families and students to the internet and to the world of through the internet, and that we're just not there yet. Even though we live in California, one of the most technologically savvy states in the nation, our school system lags behind in that effort. And then an emphasis on STEM, on science, technology, and engineering and math. Superintendent Torlakson believes that has to play a larger role in preparing our students. And then finally, this interconnectedness and cohesiveness of the system as a whole, breaking down those silos, making sure that we collaborate not only within our own agency, but across the agencies that you will hear from today. And strategically, because money's not going to come flowing in anytime soon, so we have to be strategic about how we do that and how we can scale up. We must prepare all of our students for the world of work and community participation after high school graduation, whether they go directly to work or college. We must prepare our students to compete in the 21st century economy, and the vision needs to be instilled at every level of the public education system. I want to reiterate, this is not a high school charge. This is a goal that needs to be instilled as we re-look at our system and the levers that we have to push the system to do what we'd like it to do. And with that, Pat Ainsworth will answer all the difficult questions. Dr. Ainsworth is a division director. He oversees our secondary and career education or adult education programs.
So we don't call it BOCET anymore. Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
Well, I'm just curious. We had the secretary come in and talk about, what he's doing. And, he's new in the job, etc. Just out of curiosity, have you guys ever met with them to figure this out, to cross cross paths or share information about how you're dealing with workforce development?
No, we haven't met with the agency staff yet. I really think that is more a function of the newness of the administration, both at the department and the governor's office.
Well, has it ever happened historically?
Yes. Actually, in the late 90s, there was a very strong, deliberate effort called the Regional Workforce Economic, RWAPA, Regional Workforce Economic and Workforce Development Act. Anyway, it was a interagency effort to look at how we could coordinate our various funding streams and efforts around a more client-centered approach, a student-centered approach, rather than an institutional approach.
Then what happened?
The administration's changed. The Workforce Investment Act came in. The Workforce Investment Board changed more into an administrative board rather than a policy effort, and there just has not been the level of coordination. There have been starts. We've really advocated for collaboration for a long time. Probably our closest partner is the community colleges, just because it's a natural and in this workforce development, and we have fiscal arrangements, and then right close behind them is UC system. We've done a lot of work with them on the UC Institutes, qualifying CTE courses for A through G. Tremendous growth in that area. It's all come out of funding we've provided to the UC system. So there's been good collaboration within education agencies, but with the other workforce development systems, which I think has been characterized as a second chance system, there hasn't been as much. And I agree with Senator Steinberg. We've got education is the first, is the system, a first choice for workforce development in this state. And we ought to be focusing on that as the core. And I think bringing all these things into some sort of cohesive fabric.
Again, not a broken record, but my bill AB 1310, the original form before we had to make a change for appropriations. They just wanted one agency to be the top, and then everybody else would be the stakeholders. We had all of the different community college, WIB, K-12. That's why Thomas endorsed the AB 1310, and then all these other pieces together to come up with this strategic plan. We have to do that, and I think Marty was very clear on how it could also be a great place to sort of streamline, get everybody, minimize duplication, and it just seems like something we need to do. And I think if people say you can already do it, and I've heard that many times when people say we're going to veto the bill or we don't like the bill because you can already do it. Well, if you can already do it, how come you haven't? How long do we have to wait? And we're not trying to tell anybody because we're not telling them what the end result product would be, but it just seems to be common sense to me, particularly as Daryl just said. I mean, this is the future. And that is in fact the case as it connects jobs, industry, labor, and education. Sure would be good to have a plan.
Great.
With that, we might want to segue to the next panel, and thank you very much, because we're going to hear from the folks that are, in fact, trying to make it real in the schools. We're going to hear from Janet Harden, Solano County Office of Education, Deanna Hansen with the National Academy Foundation, one of the groups, having had the privilege of working with J.D. Hoy in the Clinton administration on school-to-career programs, one of the people who really pioneered in both the inspirational aspects and the practical aspects of this work. And then Charlie Dayton, sort of the father of California's partnership academies, which many of us feel are a great model for doing this kind of educating. Welcome to the committee, all of you. If you could each speak briefly, and then we'll have questions for the whole panel.
You want me to go ahead and start?
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Janet Harden. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Workforce Development for the Solano County Office of Education. I want to thank you all for inviting us here today. Our County Superintendent, Jay Speck, sends his regrets. He's out of state and was not able to be here today. But today I'll be presenting to you a new accountability model, accountability for CTE programs that the Solano County Office of Education, in partnership with our 6 local school districts, developed and started using during the 2009-2000 school year. And it is a model that we are very excited about, and we have been taking it throughout the state, and we've been asked to present this model, so it's really our pleasure to be able to share it with you today. We're in our second year of using the new model, and we have actually just seen great results. So 2009, we implemented it, and I'll share that with you. And this year, we actually put into place some of the changes and growth that we needed to do. And it's made a huge difference in the benefits for students. The Solano County Office of Education will continue to grow this model as a valid and standardized means to assess and measure the success of our programs and therefore the success for our students. And we strongly believe that Career Tech Ed is a critical component in learning and for success for all students. It helps to close the achievement gap. It helps to drop lower the dropout rate, and it really helps to keep kids motivated and want to stay in school, motivated for wanting to continue to learn. And we do believe that motivation goes across the core academics also. And it shows the kids the links between academics and why do we need to learn this. They need the relevance and they need the rigor. So the Solano County Office of Education has offered ROP, or Regional Occupational Programs, since the late 1960s, and we've worked with our local 6 districts and offered premium ROP programs. But when ROP went into flex, and of course education continues now to face very difficult and uncertain economic times, our district superintendents came to our superintendent at the county and said, ROP is great, but we want more. We want more leadership from your county office in the area of CTE for all students, all CTE for all students. And we knew that we could do that, and we walked away and we kind of thought, okay, how are we going to do this? What will this look like? And our first challenge really was to figure out how to get to know the programs, the teachers, and the students that were associated with the Career Tech Ed programs that were not ROP. They weren't funded through ROP. And this is going to move us to the document that you have in front of you, and I'm going to take you through parts of this. And for Senator Hancock and Assemblymember Fioritani, I actually put little tabs on yours also. So I thought it might be helpful for you. So, you don't have a booklet, huh? The name of the booklet is called The Solano Focus on Public Education, Career Technical Education in Solano County, and the accountability part of it is Elements of a High-Quality Career Technical Education Program. And so the first tab is pages 1 and 2, and this covers the history of ROP in Solano County, and it introduces you to an assessment tool as it relates to the California State Plan for Career Technical Education, the 2008-12 state plan. And I've covered some of this with you already in my introduction. And if you turn to page 2, you'll see a list of the 11 elements, starting with leadership at all levels, high-quality curriculum and instruction, career exploration. Those are the 11 elements that the California State Plan is really asking us to measure our programs against so that we know we have high-quality programs. If you turn to your tab 2, which is pages 23 through 26 in the back, so you would have a tab on there, pages 23 through 26. This is the actual assessment tool that we used when we went out to assess our programs, and we modified this assessment tool from the California State Plan for Career Tech Ed. You will see in the green bars all of the 11 elements. So you'll go through each page and all 11 elements are listed there. We put in what is being assessed, and we put in examples of evidence. And what we decided to do, we decided we were not going to just hand this out to teachers and ask them to fill it in and say, this is what I do or this is what I don't do, because we all needed to learn. So we set up a system where we met with associations, of course, to make sure we didn't cross any union boundaries in evaluating teachers instead of programs. And we started meeting with teachers on an individual basis at our districts. Some of these teachers we had never, ever met before. And it was very interesting to sit and have a conversation with them about, tell me about high-quality curriculum and instruction. Give me examples of high-quality curriculum and instruction, because we wanted to find out what were people thinking who were teaching the room, and what were the people thinking who were administering the programs, and what were the real needs of what we needed to see happen. I will tell you that this was just an amazing, amazing assessment tool, and it took us about 5 months to go through it. And I will talk with you in a few minutes about some of the results. If you go to tab 3, which is pages 12 through 22, you will see the results of the assessment with the data disaggregated by each of the 11 elements. So, for example, on page 12, the data disaggregated is by leadership. And you will see, just picking out a couple here, Benicia Unified School District, 60% of the programs that we assessed in their district with district support met the standards of leadership. So that told us that 40% of them did not. So we knew that's where we would have some work to do. Dixon Unified, 100% of the CTE programs demonstrated. Or Vacaville, 70%. Or you turn the next page to high quality curriculum and instruction, and you'll see from the bar graph that Dixon Unified, and this was all evidence-based, so we had the evidence, we had the data. 67% of the CTE programs met the standards of curriculum and instruction. Travis Unified, 77% met. Vallejo City Unified, 89% met. And you go through each of the elements because the data has been disaggregated by the elements. When you go to tab 4, which would be pages 5 through 11, you will see that we have disaggregated the results by school districts. So page 5 is a summary page countywide, but then you can go to page 6 and see the results for Dixon based on each of the 11 elements. So these results not only give us a roadmap and a clear direction and a clear status report of where we are right now, each by district, but also by elements countywide. So they gave the districts and our countywide plan a very good roadmap to work from. On pages, if you go to tab 5, which is pages 3 through 4, you will find a graph showing the 15 industry sectors in Solano County. And as a result of our assessment, we found that energy and utilities was one sector that we did not have in full motion at that time, 2009-10, in Solano County. However, we were in the process of applying for a California Partnership Academy grant, and we now have energy and utilities up and running. And below the graph, you will find the findings from our assessment. This assessment was much more in-depth than we ever would have dreamed it would have been. But once we got out there and we started working, it was just amazing. So, for example, we found that countywide, we found that Career Tech Ed programs, which had direct support in the areas of curriculum development, professional development, financial resources, personnel, etc., such as from ROP, that they did score higher in more elements than those programs that did not have direct, dedicated support given to them. we found that 44% of the CTE programs assessed had CTSOs, which were California Technical Student Organizations, embedded in their curriculum. And so that told us that that might be an area that we really want to work on to help develop leadership skills for students. And on page 4, you will see the findings continued and then some next steps. And that's really what I would like to share with you right now would be the next steps. And I'm going to talk, you have a green insert in your page, and we don't have our full document done yet for this year's findings, but we did want to give you a green insert to be able to walk away with. And so, as I said, during the 2009-10 school year is when we assessed, and that was just an amazing undertaking, and we are so thankful, and we have no regrets that we did that. And from there, we set our goals and chose our priorities as a countywide effort. And so now I can talk to you a little bit about the results. The number one change as a result of the assessment has been in Solano County, we no longer offer ROP classes. We no longer offer ROP classes. We now provide leadership and support to all of our school districts for all CTE students and programs. And these include sequences such as construction trades, different entrepreneurial programs, and STEM programs such as biotechnology, principles of engineering, robotics, and many, many others. I think what was so amazing at that point, and what I want to share, and yet it sounds like it was just something so small, when we met with all of these teachers and we saw the students in action and we really went through this assessment, at the end of it all, we realized that for many, many, many years, we had been supporting the advanced class, the ROP class, the advanced class, with personnel time, with expertise, with financial resources, with leadership, with technical support. And all these classes in the sequence leading up to this advanced class were not receiving that same support. And it was of no fault of the districts, and we honestly believe that. They wear a million different hats when they're there, and it's, you're vice principal, you're going to be in charge of CTE also, and you're going to be in charge of the custodians, and, a million different hats. The experts in ROP, which is Career Tech Ed, were in the room, and yet we were not able to do that. So we flexed, and I'm happy to say that we now present full and provide leadership and support to the full sequence of career technical education in Solano County. And that does extend to the middle schools, and it will to the elementary schools. And so we no longer have ROP. The light bulb really went on at that point. So some results, we've increased our career technical student organizations, the CTSOs, by an additional 6 this year. We grew 6 new CTSOs this year. This means leadership opportunities for our students in DECA, FBLA, Skills USA, and these leadership skills, which are part of the curriculum and then part outside the regular classroom, are what we believe teach kids about leadership skills, being a team player, learning how to lose and to win, maybe coming in second or third instead of not always first, and it's going to help them gain employment, retain employment, because they're going to know how to act and present themselves. We also had a countywide advisory committee, and we had over 120 participants, business educators, students, and educators, and business industry. We increased participation of all career technical education teachers in professional development, and where it used to just be ROP, now it's all of them. And teachers who, throughout the county, who maybe teach multimedia types of classes, they now work together, or teachers who are teaching virtual enterprise or biotechnology, they now actually work together. And what that has caused, it's called a ripple into the middle schools where those programs are now beginning. So it's been very exciting. We have developed a countywide data collection system for all CTE programs. and we collect data on the business industry participation. And it's just been amazing. If we want to know what was the interaction. Did they come into your classroom and give a lesson? Did they invite you out for a field trip? Did they come in and team teach with you for a day? We want to know what the real interaction was there. And learning opportunities outside the classroom and many more. And as I said, it's increased opportunities at the middle schools. We've received some middle school grants, and we now have some after-school programs in biotechnology and robotics. And the districts are now asking us, as leaders in Career Tech Ed, to be part of their CPM reviews, their categorical program monitoring reviews. And they've asked us to take a leadership role in working with them on their applications for Perkins and to help them implement their Perkins plans, which is huge. So just in conclusion, I'd like to say that these last 2 years have been amazing. They have been a lot of work. They have been eye-openers. But we believe that we have taken a bold step in increasing assessment and accountability of all CTE programs, of improving opportunities for all students, and for serving all Career Tech Ed. We look forward to continuing to learn, continuing to use our assessment, and to improve and sustain Career Tech Ed for all students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Deanna Hansen from the National Academy Foundation.
Thank you all very much for inviting us and for opening this topic.
Get the microphone. Yeah. And if it's possible to get a little more heat in the room, it would be good.
I saw you shivering. The National Academy Foundation is a national organization, and we help districts and schools develop academies within the schools and in some cases in standalone schools, particularly having prioritized those inner city communities with a high number of students who are dropping out, and really looking at an academy model as a preventative measure. If we identify students in the 8th grade that really need some support, that might not make it through high school, and we can get their attention and interest in something that they relate to, something that maybe they'd like to do someday as a career, but at least for today, this is their interest, and that we can provide them an atmosphere in a small learning community with a group of teachers and the students who are together for a 4-year period of time, and that the courses that are developed in our organization, NAF, we provide curriculum for all of the industry sectors, that we have academies in the models. And that curriculum combines things like the integrated units with math and English and science, so that students are learning the academic subjects, but it's all tied to whatever the theme is that they are interested in. So if they're in a finance academy, all of the core academic subjects are taught in concert. The teachers are doing projects together with the students, and the students can see the relevance of why do I need to learn this, which has always been one of the big questions in students' minds. The National Academy Foundation has been around for 30 years, and we are in 42 states, so when we look at it state by state, like California, although California is a bit unique, every state has specific requirements, and so we try to develop our models so that we meet the needs of all states, whether it be for curriculum that's going to allow students to go on to university-level courses, and also curriculum embedded in it, giving them more information that they can then be prepared for an apprenticeship or some other type of after graduation opportunity if they don't decide to immediately go on to university. But we do firmly believe that all students should be prepared to do either. So just like someone going to Stanford or Harvard needs to be prepared someday to work, and pay off their bills. Students that might not immediately go on to college also have to be prepared so that academically, when they do decide or they find a job that's of interest that requires a higher level education, that they've got the background, that they're not stymied because they don't have it. Our students are not, they are all self-selected. We believe very strongly in equity, and we do not allow any of our academies to have any kind of entrance requirements. And yet the results for academy students who have been in academy models, and this includes the California Partnership Academies, because some of the same studies have included students from both entities. Over 90% of our students graduate from high school. One of the great things we learned the last time MDRC did this longitudinal report after 8 years of a student being out of high school, they were studying where students had progressed to and who's graduated and what jobs they're in. And a couple of particularly interesting statistics. As a parent of 4 daughters who all seemed to be in college at the same time, this statistic was particularly important to me, that more students graduate in 4 years than the average across the nation is typically 6 now for college graduation. And so it's kind of nice to see that they can get through a little bit more quickly because they are better prepared. Also, we learned that from an economic standpoint, students who have had experiences in academies are more likely to earn a higher wage after going into the workforce. And in particular, African American male students earned 17% more than their counterparts. That is a dramatic statistic and something that I think shows the importance of offering these opportunities to students. We have 5 academy models. Health Sciences is our newest one and is being piloted this year. We have information technology, which includes the digital media work. We have law and we have business, which we've kind of added the ability to specialize in law and other things with business and finance emphasis. We have a hospitality and tourism curriculum, and we have an engineering curriculum. So, as I said, we're providing the curriculum for all of those students that take these courses in high school. One of the things, we know that we really make an impact on students' lives, but from a standpoint of how can we really demonstrate that this is true? How do we know student outcomes other than those from studies like MDRC? How do we know that it really makes a difference? So our organization has spent a great deal of time and attention developing accountability systems that will, first of all, show us within an academy structure how well is this academy doing against what we know over 30 years is important for a model to work for young people. So much of the information that's been provided to you talks about the Academy Improvement Guide and ability for the academies to first self-assess, and not just one person, one teacher, but a team of people that include advisory boards and college people, community college and university partners that might be involved with that school, even students, to all be together and assess the different dimensions and how their academy ranks. So we're looking at what we call academy model itself. So what does the academy look like? How many students are involved? How's the recruitment done? A variety of different dimensions under that component. We are assessing their advisory board. It is extremely important that industry be involved. And not just with the students in the academies. We have industry involved in developing the courses that we use within the NAF curriculum. advisors from business are critical. It points back to the earlier discussion today that we're preparing students to be ready to go into jobs that are needed in our communities. So it's the industry needs that really drive much of what we do. And when we offer new themes, we're doing it because the industries are saying this is extremely important to us in developing our workforce of the future. Another element, of course, is curriculum, and we definitely ask in the assessment several things about how the curriculum is used and whether it's integrated and whether teams of teachers are using it. And then the fourth element that we pay a great deal of attention to, and this goes back to school to work a great deal, but the experience that students have outside of the classroom, that it is extremely important that they have an opportunity to be in the real world. So the culminating event is an internship, hopefully a paid internship, because like was mentioned earlier, many students need to work and earn money in the summertime or during the school year. So if we're offering internships that are unpaid, they often have to make a choice between an internship and getting a job and helping their family. So we promote with our business community the value and importance of having those be paid. But it's not just that culminating internship, because we have to get students ready for that. So an entire spectrum of work-based learning opportunities where business members come into the classroom, work with students, perhaps our mentors are speaking, where they're doing field trips and all types of job shadows, so that they're preparing using 21st century skills that also are embedded in the curriculum in order to be ready to be out working with a business person. And then the additional assessment ties to the student themselves. So what does the student get out of all of this? We have an assessment system developed for each of our courses that includes portfolio assessment on a project. It includes a component that's an actual assessment, a test against what they've learned. And probably the most important part is the internship assessment component. So the supervisor, the teacher, the student, and the workforce development person in the school are all asked to be part of that assessment process. And once the student goes through that and knows exactly what they're going to be assessed on, then in the end they get a certification from the National Academy Foundation that is now being recognized in major universities across the nation as something that has value because they understand what the student has been doing the last 4 years. So Cornell University is one, for example, and they recognize that a student with that stamp of approval is typically prioritized for admission. In some cases, they're even given credits, university credits, for some of the courses they've taken. And now we're working with business and industry on a national basis and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce so that they understand as well that these students are prepared for the world of work with all the 21st century skills. So we find that it's extremely important that the accountability system be in place. NAF is unique in that up to now, we have not ever received any type of government funding, state or federal. So we rely 100% on getting funding from our business partners at a high level and from foundations and other associations that are national in scope. And that's what helps to defray the expenses of building curriculum and providing the professional development and the other work that we do out in the field with the academies, actually one-on-one. So there is a great deal of interest across the country. Linked learning, thank goodness for linked learning, and from a national standpoint, many states are beginning to adopt this, perhaps not legislatively in all cases yet, and certainly the federal government, there's close to being a bill represented. But the important thing is that basically all of the organizations that are partners of ours on a national and on a California basis, particularly California, we've all agreed that the parameters on which we are assessing academies and the parameters on which students can get additional certification is an important element, and we're all in agreement about what those different measurements are. So that's quite a feat. I know Charlie and I and ConnectEd and California Partnerships Academies and others across the nation have worked very hard on trying to build a rubric that is the same so that our academies, many of the NAF academies in California, are also CPAs. And they may also be affiliated with NCAC, which is a national organization that does assessments and certifies academies, which means that if that's the case, plus WASC, that they have to basically go through a process 4 times in order to be validated by all these organizations. So we're trying very hard to make sure that it's transparent and that we can use each other's assessment process. So that's the most exciting thing, and you know JD, that was one of her biggest questions when she walked in the door of our organization almost 5 years ago, was your accountability measurements. So it's been a priority. We're glad to bring it to you, and I will say that any of the materials that we have developed or will develop are available for states or districts or anyone who thinks that it can be incorporated. Please don't reinvent every wheel. Use what we already have out there, and we're happy to work with you in any way we can.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, Charles Dayton, the California Partnership Academies.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair. Appreciate being here and being invited. I appreciate you using the word father when you introduced me as the father of Partnership Academies. I've heard the word grandfather occasionally lately. So. I'm here simply to tell you a little bit about the California Partnership Academies. I think you probably already know a fair amount about them, and I'll be brief, I promise. There are currently about 500 of these animals in California. They're based in comprehensive high schools. They each receive grants from the California Department of Ed. They are currently in 20% of the high schools in the state. That's about 250 high schools. They serve about 3% of the high school students in California. So there are about 50,000 students in the California Partnership Academies currently. We're in the middle of an examination of data from the 09-10 reports from each of these academies, so I'm in the fortunate position of being able to give you some current statistics about them. They've been evaluated since they began 25 years ago, so we have lots of data over the past quarter century about their performance. In 2009-10, the pattern continued that there were more students of color in the academies than is true of state averages. In 2009-10, 59% of the students in the Partnership Academies were Latino. The state average is 47%. 10% were black. The state average is 7.5%. So there were fewer white students and Asian students. 53% were female. The state average is 51%. So they operate in all 15 career technical education fields, but there are many more in certain fields than other fields. For example, right now there are 75 in health and bioscience and 2 in interior design. Those represent the ends of the spectrum. The other more popular fields are arts and media entertainment, finance, engineering, and public service. They all have at least 50 or so. Geographically, there are about 130 in Los Angeles. That's the city with the most. The Bay Area has about 60, Sacramento about 40, and the other cities up and down the Central Valley follow: Bakersfield, Fresno, Modesto, Stockton. Your aide was very helpful in preparing me about what to say here, and she asked me to provide a brief description of what an academy is. There are three defining features, and Deanna's already covered this pretty well, so I won't go into any detail here, but essentially they incorporate a small learning community in a comprehensive high school with a team of teachers. They operate in grades 10 through 12 typically. They combine academic and CTE curriculum, typically 3 academic classes and 1 CTE class each year. And they show students connections between those. And the third element is partnerships with employers in higher education. And these outside partners are involved on advisory boards as speakers, field trip hosts, job shadowing hosts, mentors, and providing internships for the Academy students. Deanna mentioned that Linked Learning has taken the Academy model and tried to add some systemization to it, and it's been a very helpful process. They operate currently in 9 districts that have tried to take a comprehensive approach to administering academies and other similar programs. As far as the grant system for academies in California, the maximum grant currently is about $65,000 annually. Many get less than that, and it's not determined in advance, but it's a performance-based amount. Each academy has to submit student performance data at the end of each year, and based on the number of students that qualify in terms of attendance and credits, funding is accorded. They all are competitive grants. Nothing goes out by formula, and they require a 2-for-1 local match. Every dollar that the state spends on an academy has to be matched 2-for-1 at the local level, fully by the receiving district and also by supporting employers, usually primarily in the form of in-kind support. They also require that a minimum of 50% of each entering sophomore meet at-risk requirements. These requirements include factors such as low attendance, low credits, low test scores, low grades, or economic disadvantagement. On average, the grants go to schools with less than an average API score. So, I think you've got the picture. They serve a predominantly at-risk group of students. Another question I was asked to address is what makes the experience of high school different being in an academy from just being a regular student in a high school? And Deanna's covered some of this too, so I don't need to say much on this. First of all, it's voluntary. A student chooses to be in an academy. They're not assigned there. They learn about the options their freshman year, and they pick one that's of interest to them. That seems to make a difference in their motivation. They also speak to an interest outside the traditional academic fields of English, math, science, social studies. So it's a way to make curriculum real for a student. There's a very supportive atmosphere because students as a group move across these 4 classes, so they get to know the other students in their classes very well. We hear stories constantly about how their kids are helping each other in these academies. There's also a team of teachers, 3 academic, 1 career technical education teacher who work together. So there's a real effort to integrate curriculum across these subjects. The academies are often referred to as a form of connected learning. We've been talking about the importance of connections here. They connect subjects, they connect kids to their teachers, they connect what goes on inside high schools with what goes on outside high schools. They connect kids to what they may want to do in the future. Another topic I was asked to say a word or two about is how do those working in academies assess whether they're being successful or not? Just a couple of thoughts on that count. I would say, first of all, it's not via standardized test scores. It's not that these are unimportant, but it's not how teachers gauge their success. It's more related to student motivation and getting kids excited about school and keeping them in school. So probably the most valuable measure of success for teachers is retaining kids. So many drop out of high school and keeping them there through graduation. They're also interested in variables like credits, grades, graduation rates, UCC issue qualification, and college going at all levels of college. So finally, let me present you with a few of the numbers we have with respect to the performance of academies. And this is based, as I said, on the 2009-10 student data that we have. sophomores in the academies passed the KC High School Exit exam at a slightly higher rate than statewide averages. Now keep in mind they're primarily at-risk kids, but in English language arts they were about 5% higher. Girls did a little better than boys. In math they were roughly equal to state averages. Graduation rates, last year 95% of academy students graduated on time. The state average was 80%. Again, this is among at-risk kids. And the biggest differences between the state averages and the academy students were among students of color. For Latino and black students, the difference was over 20 points. If you turn that statistic around and describe it in terms of the number of dropouts, there are fewer than a quarter as many kids dropping out in academies as in statewide averages. CSU UC A through G qualification. Last year, 57% of academy students qualified in that regard. The state average was 35%. Postgraduate plans. Last year, this is at the point kids are leaving as for graduating seniors. 29% of academy graduates were planning to go to a four-year college, 60% to a community college. The combined figure is about 89%. Most were planning to do some work as well. And finally, there's another study outside California that evaluated academies nationally, and Deanna referred to some of the statistics there. They used an actual experimental design where they randomly assigned students into academies or not, all of whom had applied to be in an academy and wanted to be in one. And they tracked these kids for 15 years, 3 cohorts, all the way through high school and for 8 years after high school. They systematically found advantages in favor of the academy kids on academic measures while in high school, and 8 years after high school found academy students getting statistically significantly higher wages in better jobs and forming more stable families. More of them were married, more of them had children that they were raising in a two-parent family. So in a nutshell, those are the numbers we have on academies. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members of the panel?
I had a question to Deanna. You have partnered with San Francisco Unified. Can you tell us something about what you've discovered?
We have the statistics that we talked about are pretty much true there too. One of the things that we're pushing really hard on our academies to increase their assessment standards level for each of the academies, and probably the biggest difference in San Francisco and what we're working most with them, their academies are quite small. We know that the economies of scale work much better, and you can schedule students in courses much more easily if you've got between 300 and 400 students in an academy over a 4-year period. And so some of the academies in the San Francisco schools are quite substantially smaller than that. The students are doing well. We have one school in San Francisco Unified, Burton High School, that is a wall-to-wall NAF Academy school with 4 of the 5 themes now in that school. And so we're working very closely with them to make certain that the students know how to select the academy model that's most interesting to them.
And you followed their progress, and it pretty much confirms
yes.
Their success. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question, just in a way, for all 3 of you. I'm interested in how you combine the career technical courses with the humanities. The math and science part you can see pretty easily, but what about social studies, history, English classes, by which I mean literature, not just grammar or teaching English as a second language? How does that get done?
You know, interestingly, it's almost easier with the humanities courses and the English courses because whatever type of project they're doing in whatever theme environment, and I'll just use health as an example, if they're working on a health project that talks about how disease spreads, for example, well, you know how many books and movies have been written about that whole epidemic.
Yeah.
And the students are able to combine learning the skills in English. They do a lot of historical research around the particular project and topic that they're working on. And the topical social studies, you know, what's happening today in today's world, is woven in on a daily basis in almost every one of those. In some of the finance classes, you can imagine the world economy. Those topics today are discussed heavily, and it's very interesting to students because they can read this in the newspaper as well as learn about it in class, and it all relates.
Yeah, that is actually a very interesting idea because we've had legislation, for example, in mandating that financial literacy be part of the curriculum. Well, it may happen in a fairly organic way.
An example from social studies is The Grapes of Wrath as a popular novel with kids. It certainly relates closely to a part of our history. And there are lots of other examples. In many cases, literature tracks historical trends and issues.
Yeah, that part of it is very interesting to me, too. I actually had some young men from a Central Valley. They were teachers in an agriculture career. You know, that was in the early days of school to career, so that was sort of voc ed ag, but they were looking at making it more CTE, who we were talking about that. And the next day when I saw them at the conference, they said, "We've got it. We're going to teach Grapes of Wrath," which would bring in history, too, of course.
Right.
I mean, you'd be able to combine a lot of things like that. I just wondered, so what do you do in Solano County?
Well, I was going to give some examples. We also, in our new work that we do now with All Career Technical Education, we actually do work with some of the partnership academies. Vallejo has some partnership academies, and as does, I'm going to say Armio. I'm not sure that's right, though. But it's actually, if we have a Principles of Engineering and Robotics program, which takes in manufacturing, takes in science, takes in the drafting part of engineering and the architectural part, all of that goes into the study of history and geography when you're learning about when certain parts of manufacturing started, how did it start, how has it evolved over the years, when did it take a backseat to other kinds of work that came forward and has been more pronounced. As we've seen lately, manufacturing's kind of gone by the wayside a little bit, and now it's starting to build back up. So it all goes back to, over time, really studying it and finding out why certain decisions were made the way they were. When did industrial technology come more into manufacturing and into the industrial world? So it goes into all facets of it. It really does. It's quite interesting. But I will say what it takes, and I used to be a California Partnership Academy teacher. I was one of the first, and I absolutely loved it. It was my favorite way to teach. And but it takes the teachers working together and planning. Planning is very, very important, and being creative and understanding that Career Tech Ed is not for those other kids. Career Tech Ed is for all kids, and it becomes part of the math and the science and the history, the humanities programs, and because it's going to help students stay motivated, rigor in the curriculum, relevance, and it's the beauty of seeing kids be successful. We found we had much fewer discipline issues with kids because they knew that the teachers all worked together also. It is a wonderful, wonderful model.
I can see also with the two connectors, one, the age-old question, why do I need to learn that? You link that from the CTE part to the academic part. The other one is the word relevance. I mean, in these kinds of programs, the way I've seen the academies approach it, easily linking ethnic studies
Yes.
as a part of that. Labor
Absolutely.
studies. I mean, if you can talk about manufacturing, you got to talk about labor unions and the history of labor, where we come up with the 8-hour day. All of this could be integrated.
It's part of it.
In the 6th grade back in the 50s, I had a teacher that our project was to fly around the world. And we had a budget, and we had to learn about weather because we were flying. We had to buy an airplane. We had to figure out land speed, how long it was going to take us to get there. And then as we plotted how many miles we could fly on the X number of gallons of gas, then where we landed, we had to act like whatever that country was, what it was like, write a report, what the food
Rigor and
was like,
relevance.
all of these things. So
We've
this
also
is not as new as we think it is.
Right.
We've also seen an increase in gender equity, in more females in our principles of engineering and robotics programs, biotechnology, and additional males in culinary programs, not the old home economics, but the culinary
Right.
that are more standards-based, an influx of males in there. And, we all know how important it is to motivate students to really see all their potential and to sometimes find out, man, this is not what I want to do.
Right.
Sure.
That is just as important as this is where I think I really have an interest. So it's all very, very important, and it really comes from people working together. Have to work together.
So you also need then the preparation time
Yes,
for
yes.
teachers and
Yes.
some of those other things in addition to the connecting activities that it's important that someone does. I do have a question, though, especially for Charlie because of the partnership academies, which is the issue of saying that 50% of the kids have to be at risk, did you say?
Yes. At the point they enter,
That what?
not at the point they exit.
Not at the point they exit, no, but at the point they enter.
Right.
So that could lead to concerns about tracking. Now, of course, many of our schools, as I say this, I realize have 70% free and reduced lunch or whatever. So I don't know what the criteria are, but how do you avoid that for those kids, not other kids?
When the program began in 1985, it required 100% of kids to meet at-risk requirements, and that was exactly the problem that occurred. It was reduced several years later to 66%, two-thirds, and then to 50% to address exactly that problem. I think what makes it work is the fact that half of the students don't have to be at risk, and the subjects of these academies grab the interest often of kids, who are good performers as well. So you wind up with very mixed integrated classes, and you have student leaders who are the most powerful influence on other students, who can provide real role models. You also have a lot more contact with adults because there's more parent contact. The academy teachers systematically get in touch with the parents. There are the speakers, the field trips, the job shadowing, the mentors, the internship supervisors. And the research shows that the more contact a young person has with adults who can provide role models, the likelier they are to take school seriously, to do their best. So we find those have real influences.
How about Charlie, you had mentioned, all of you had mentioned in one way or another, the issue of funding. The match you were talking about, and you were talking about getting funds from outside government. I don't know how you did in Solano, but
I could speak to that a little bit.
how about the funding part of it? I mean, extra money?
Well, you want to...
Go ahead.
I will say the grant amount for academies was set in 1993 at $81,000. Today it's $65,000. That's the cap, the most they can get. So over the last 18 years, it's dropped such that it's worth about half what it was when the value was set. And it is a struggle for a district to operate, or a high school to operate an academy with that little funding. Well, as you mentioned, one of the things that's important is to have common planning time for teachers, and at least a little release time for someone to coordinate all this. But according to the data that we collect each year, about 75% of the support comes locally. And so oftentimes a lot of what's needed can come through those local matches,
Right.
particularly from employers who often help with the coordination, certainly of all the activities that they're involved in. But it is a struggle, and we've seen districts work harder and with more difficulty to make that district match in the last few years with all the budget cuts.
What we've also found is that those schools and those districts that are trying to run simultaneous programs, they're still trying to run a comprehensive high school that has every course imaginable that any student may want to take, and also run an academy model within that high school. That's where more of an expense comes in. Most schools are paying or are providing extra time and a period off for department heads. But we're asking that the academy directors have a time off. Whether or not there's a need for the duplication